the very first step, is to show that these numbers are really aspects of one's own personality and that they are also guides. They represent aspects of yourself. And the beauty of it is that these are your tools or your methods of changing reality and changing the world to suit your agenda. These are healing tools as well. They help you to become educated into how the mind actually works. As opposed to the world that is now, the mind is out of sync because we haven't been using these tools. So we perceive reality, or the mind perceives reality, but the mind may not be reality. The mind may be out of sync, very in a state of unsanity and unreality, where you are subservient to the world's order. And the world's controls and the world's dictates and the dictates of other people. As we go through all the numbers, they all have these meanings relative to human traits and proclivities. First, we accept that they're encapsulations of human traits. The numbers are also mirrors because they both facilitate your ego needs, but they also instruct your ego needs. So more clearly what they are, they're both teachers and they're facilitators. They are like they're two ways, like a signal, like an electrical signal, or like a guitar amplifier with the cable, the pickup on a guitar is two ways. It sends out a sound, but it's also receiving a signal. And communication is always like that. Numerological archetypes are also two-way signals. For instance, a good comparison is in astrology. When you have a planet occupying a particular house, an astrologer says, oh, you have Mercury in the first house, and this means this, and this. In my particular take on astrology, I always incorporate the fact is, yes, but it's not just telling you what is going to happen in the external environment coming around the corner, so to speak. It's also saying what you should dress like for the occasion. It's saying that, because look at the way that most astrologers would do it. They'd say this is going to happen in the normal predictive style. Well, that means then that you don't really know exactly what's going to happen, so you have to be playing it by ear all the time and expecting something to come around the corner. The alternative way to read it is that the archetype or the planet in that house is telling you, no, this is what you do regardless of the situation that arises. Suddenly there's a whole different slant on it. So now you say, whoa, okay, then it doesn't really matter to me what comes around the corner, and I'm all ready for it because this archetype has told me what to wear for that situation. This is where the art really comes in. Now the numbers are the same thing. So when somebody says, I did not see on this particular day X happening, well, numbers have these two faces. It's like the god Janus of the two faces. You were maybe expecting it to have this, how would we put it, you expected it to manifest something in your life outside your participation. So you sat back and you didn't really participate in it.
The key in this is to be a co-creator with the numbers.
Right, and this is their higher level aspect, which of course in the beginning people may not be aware because they're always externally looking. They really do imagine that fate is this external thing separate to consciousness, that there's you, right? And then there's this autonomous thing called fate that just has its own mechanisms. For a lot of people, because of various conditionings, we're not aware that it's like cogs in a wheel. Every cog is interconnected with another cog. That consciousness and fate are the same thing. As the Greeks said, your character is your fate. So who you are and your attitude and your thinking process does create the fate that comes to you. But if you're into these arts, then that's a given. The consciousness and the world energy, the energy of fate, of destiny, are totally one and the same thing, and that your thinking creates the kind of lifestyle and the life path that you have. Now, that brings in these arts, because TimeGnosis, TimeScopes, Numerology is a life map of that life path. It helps you to make sense of it, like a sort of a pie chart or a graph. And then instead of it being static, instead of it being just like a physical static calendar of the year or any kind of static thing, which you can't change, very much like a clock, that clock on your wall is fixed archetype. If your boss says be in at 9 o'clock, you come in at 3 o'clock, it just isn't going to work. The time dial, all forms of external time are basically rigid, they're fixed, and you have to obey them. And we get so programmed into that. I mean, when it's 12 o'clock, it's no good saying it's 6 o'clock. That thing is static. The world agrees, it is, or America agrees, or England agrees it's 6 o'clock, and you can't say it's 7 o'clock. However, the TimeScopes, there's something else there. There's another principle, which is that you can, in fact, manipulate it. So this is what brings in the magical aspect of it, is that this thing has this element which is receptive to your own will. The difference with numerology and the TimeScopes concept is that, yeah, you're using something that we call time, but you're using the essence of time, meaning that when you know how to work with these numbers, they're not only telling you things, They're not only instructing you, they're not only informing you. It's like, say, an executive sitting at his desk. He doesn't have the time to run around and find out what's happening in every corner, but he gets reports. It's like the government. They have different agents who bring you reports, say, this is what's happening now. This is what's happening emotionally. This is what's happening physically. This is what's happening in the lives of other people that you know. This is what's happening in the world in general. So those dossiers that are passing your desk are these numbers. But the beauty of it is, in numerology, they work both ways. It's sort of like a quantum principle, but when the director is reading that dossier, his reading is changing the reality. So it's real sci-fi. It's very futuristic. In a normal physical context, reading the reports of what's happening in a different part of the business or a different part of the corporation or a different part of the country, just reading it physically doesn't change anything. It means that when you are working with the numbers, first you're hearing what they say. This day means this 1 day means that, the 9 day this is your beginning education. As you start to embody what this is telling you, your consciousness reacts with the day. So say you're in a 7-day and the 7 has told you this is normally an outline of what the 7-day represents. But now what you're doing is you are embodying that, and whatever 7ness is, or what 7ness means, is an aspect of your consciousness. It's not a piece of paper like a dossier on the director's desk. It's a living thing. So now when you embody that, you're in a relationship with a living thing, in exactly the same way as you're in a relationship with a living person. And this is very important because most people do not consider numbers to be living. We in the Western world have lost this incredible relationship with things because we think they're inanimate. So the first step is to realize that these numbers are aspects of yourself. And if they're aspects of yourself, then they have two roles. One is that they inform you about what's happening in your life, 11 different facets of life. But they also now, that information is instantly fed back so that you are changing what they've just told you. So your action is also changing the day. The information is instantly fed back into the realm of experience in the world. And you then are changing your own life. But this is the difference between you changing your own life and somebody else changes happening from outside, from a boss or a peer or a set of meaningless karmic circumstances that happen in life. Suddenly the reins are in your own hand. The numbers are just training you how to use those reins. It's like riding a horse or riding a bike. You need a certain amount of training, but then the rest is yours. So these numbers are training grounds for the mystery that we call life. They are the operating manuals that we should have been given when we were first born to show us that we have a personal living calendar, but that calendar is not a static, one-way fixed thing at all. It's not like a clock. It's not like a sundial. It's not like the usual calendar of the year. It is a calendar, and it has to do with time, but it's a two-way thing. It responds to you, and each of these numbers should be considered as living, as a human being, and should be considered friends. There are 11 helpmates, 11 servants, 11 facilitators, 11 tutors that show you what to do on certain days, what might be coming on certain days, and also to empower you to then start to change the reality that you live that is always changing anyway. We're always playing catch up, and have great things happen, and have no part of your life out of sync, which has bothered a lot of people into spirituality and metaphysics, is that they have a lot of areas working, but then maybe one area is really weak. So working with these works on many, many dimensions, but just on a surface level is that now you're ahead of the curve. The first step is to realize that these numbers are really aspects of your own personality, that they are you, or there are 11 versions of yourself, like 11 different mirrors of you. So that on each day, it's like having a wardrobe of 11. So the 11 archetypes are like mirrors of your own self, aspects of your own personality. They're like 7 different costumes that you can choose to wear. What we are doing is that we're wearing the wrong costumes on the wrong day. You're trying to go to the ball in your work clothes, and you're trying to dig ditches in your wedding dress. It certainly gives comic relief to the gods, but boy, it doesn't help our material life much better. So in other words, say a 7 is a person. And this person comes in and says, well, today, this is more of a sabbatical day. It's a day for research. It's a day to stay in the background a little bit. Today, you don't want to put yourself out. Today, you want to analyze. Today, you want to troubleshoot. Today, you want to research, that kind of thing. All the things that the 7-day represent. You are the one acting on the 7-day with that information that's given to you. But each human being then is slightly different. So say the person who's not very, very super active physically in their life anyway, their 5-day will not be quite the same 5-day as a histrionic person who runs out the door at 4 a.m. and is already jogging and has accomplished everything by noon, and they still get the rest of the day. So there's differences. For instance, an 8-day, we know that introverted, demure, sort of reserved, quiet people are probably not going to have the same kind of 8 expression in their lives as somebody who's a total overachieving go-getter who just seizes on every opportunity, which is not good for people who are very pedantic and who need a lot of planning and who are just so retentive in their consciousness. The 8-day, you see, will be experienced differently by those people as opposed to the go-getter who can just move quickly and who relies on chance. Other people don't rely on chance. They rely on their own patterns. And sometimes that can be a limitation. So somebody goes, oh, listen, I've been using your calendar, and on 8 days I don't see a thing of any success coming to me at all. Well, yeah, because the things are coming there, but you're vetoing it by your own energy. When in fact that 8-day might have been a call to arms, a call for you to change your particular vibration and your particular attitude. You're not moving out of your own set pattern, you see. And therefore, these opportunities are coming, but you're not seeing them or you're not grasping them because they come to your door and then you slam the door in their face. So the numbers, again, are facilitators, but they're also guides. They can help you practically in the world, and they also guide you to know how to gain greater success. Those numbers are there because they represent certain kinds of human proclivity. See, these numbers tie into special tendencies that exist within human beings. They're not some abstract concept. The number 1, the number 2, the number 5, the number 7, they're expressions of things we already normally do in life. The number 1 is based on the human proclivity for drive, for independence, for freedom, for the need to create and aspire and be separate and to make a person's own mark so that they stand out. 2 is, again, recognition of the other person, but also working together towards a mutual goal. That 2 people now have the same goal in mind and work towards the same goal, even though there's 2 people, because the goal might have been started by 1 person, but 2 represents 2 or more people working together towards the same common interest. So they're all expressions. 3 is an expression of a sort of a temporary fruition, the growth period, brainstorming, adding the creativity. Number 3 is for you to bring your own expression and to bring your own uniqueness to something, and even to have a little bit of imagination and fantasy involved. 4, however, is just saying, look, what are the physical laws? What are the rules? What are the regulations? How do you make this thing in order? Bricks are not round. Triangles are not square. There's certain laws. 4 is just about structure, realizing that everything is built on a foundation, and if you don't have good foundations, then you can forget about building because the thing will collapse. So 4 is extremely important. It's about obeying the laws of the world, not the laws as you see it. And the 4 is the test of obedience to those things. And it's also the challenge of making ideas practical. 5 is learning, growth. It's always about growing because the human being needs to grow. You create the foundation, but then, okay, where do we go from there? The 5 is exploration, it's research, it's getting out and about, and it's experimentation and innovation. Whereas 6 is about harmony and also about the concept of communication. Like now maybe we broadcast what we've done or what we've created to other people, but within a social setting, meaning it stays within the idioms of civilization. So it's not esoteric. The 6 is the sharing of ideas within 2 normal people in a very normal, casual, familiar way, without a lot of digression, without a lot of mystery, without a lot of explanations and footnotes. It's very conversational, very light, but at the same time very productive. The 7 is one of the big troubleshooting types of number, which of course then people think that the 7 habitually in numerology, they think is very inactive time. There's nothing inactive about a 7. 7 is the time for those people who have those kinds of skills of analysis and discrimination and troubleshooting and awareness of what might come around the corner as a problem. These are the forecasters who say, okay, here's a bunch of things in our business, or here's a bunch of stuff we're planning, or here's a project or an enterprise. Let me start to think about all the things that could go wrong. A lot of people can't do that. The 7 days to assist you doing that, because on the 7th day, those kinds of limitations or impediments might appear in microcosm. So therefore, the mystery of it is, the metaphysics of that is pay attention to that, because those are microcosmic little examples that you can use. So instead of getting fed up and frustrated and not wanting to deal with it, the stuff that comes in on the 7 is very, very good for those analytical people who are thinking about tomorrow and how to troubleshoot problems. The 8, of course, is the most energetic. It's similar to 1. It is about totally physical achievement. It's also about going for broke, taking risks, perhaps having to move very fast without planning. And like the 9-day is based on a particular proclivity that human beings have, which is to care about other people, to be charitable, to think less of the self, which doesn't mean think nothing of the self, but it means to maybe be concerned about the other people around you, particularly if somebody has done good for you, or particularly if somebody needs help. And then there's days when you really absolutely should not answer those calls because it would totally sabotage your own projects, like the 1 and the 5 and so on. So say, let's take the 9 again. That's just a number expression of a human trait or a human proclivity. 9 is sort of scaling back the personal needs and desires and taking to see that 9 is not altruistic and it's not about martyrdom. It's about realizing that there is a satisfactory part. You feel satisfied when you are also assisting other people because there's a learning in that as well. It is good for humility, which is why 9 is connected to humility. So it's like an exercise in humility is maybe assisting somebody else in their particular needs. 9 is also about taking care of the lives of the health of pets and animals. It's for definitely pulling back and being a lot more reserved and quiet, for attending to moves. And if you're scholastic or technical, then it is definitely for doing the fine-tuning, precise, determined, focused kind of work. But again, the essence is on solitariness. So on a 9-day, you don't want to be very social, and you don't want to be completely caught up. Why? Well, it's very obvious. The simple logic is that tomorrow is going to be a 1-day, most likely. Not all the time, but often 9s are followed by 1s, in which you're going to need all the dynamism and the energy. So see, the adversarial part of the mind would love us to burn off a lot of energy on the 9 and not get to bed till very late, so that we're really kind of burned out on the 1. So on the 9-day, it's not just about running around trying to find somebody to help or anything like that in a sort of panicky way because you feel that something will be wrong if you don't. It's about learning the lesson that comes with seeing the needs of others, but again, not letting those needs override your own. And so then the 10 is again back to the 1, and 11 is the master vibration. That's for all those kinds of things that deal with higher destiny. 11 is about choices and major decisions, about courtroom and legalistic types of events. It's also a time for coming from the highest truth. So we understand what we were saying earlier. What good is that to somebody who is not in truth? The 11-day could then be considered quite painful or uncomfortable for people whose morality is pretty lax, because 11 is a day in which dark sides of the personality, injustices, immorality, cutting corners, that kind of thing might show up. The reason why that stuff is showing up is so that you can get rid of it, not do that, and start to work towards being a better person. The 22 is similar to that, only again, the 22 now, I think of it as that the 11 helps you to interface with the divine or the higher guides. It's very pure, it's very based on divine justice and balance. The 22 is a number of mastery, but it helps us to become masters in regards to the world, in really high-end areas which have to do with physical, professional recognition and fame and so on. The public image, your public standing, your public status, your public image, as well as a spiritual component. Because, of course, to get to be that famous or to get to be recognized publicly, it is kind of a karmic thing. But then one could say all the numbers are karmic like that.